We talk Miami football every week here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And certainly you guys know that we talk it much more than once a week. We got the Wholesome One on the line. You can catch his channel here on YouTube. I'll pull up the banner so you get the spelling correct. HOLSUM, the number one, the Wholesome One right here on YouTube. Wholesome One, how you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. It's I got on a jacket today, but it's actually pretty warm up here in Fargo. So we're got some work done earlier, so we're trying to stay warm and stay inside for the most part.
I tell you, late April, we're the last few days of April here in Connecticut. It's usually low 60s at this point, and we're still hovering in the low 40s. I don't like it. I'm ready for some spring weather. No doubt about that.
Yeah, it was weird. I mean, we had a sleet storm yesterday, but then it peaked back up to 65. And that's crazy. Peak 65, but it's been up and down. Mother Nature has been all over the place up here in Fargo.
So Miami was able to pull in a recruit here in the past week, a guy that they're familiar with, a guy that they've been recruiting a long time that had committed prior to. And so get us caught up on one Alan Hay, a defensive tackle.
Yeah, defensive tackle has actually been one of the places we've been producing some pretty good talent and production as far as at the ACC level. But you have Kendrick Norton, you have RJ McIntosh, you got Gerald Willis, and guys have been making some plays. You have John Ford slowly, Nesta Severa slowly. So it's been a place where we've been developing talent. And Alan Hay is a 3-star defensive tackle from Chaminade, Madonna, down here in, I think they're in Hollywood, if I want to say. Yeah, Hollywood, Florida. There you go. And he's a very aggressive-handed defensive tackle. I mean, if you watch his film, and of course it is a highlight tape, but if you watch his film, it's like play after play after play. He's the first one that engages. He's the first one that disengages and then goes to make a play for Chaminade. So it's a place that we've had a lot of success bringing in defensive players, period. I mean, you had Keontre Smith. You have Gregory Rousseau. You have our nickel corner. I am losing to Corey Couch. Yeah, all those guys have come from Chaminade over the last 2 years or so. So some of their best players have all been sent over to Miami. So actually, no, that's not right. That's Chaminade. Shopping Yacht is where they are from. It's a whole different school. I apologize. Same like spelling, just the T in the middle and same colors. So it's a kind of a misconception of Chaminade and Shopping Yacht. But they're from Shopping Yacht. He's from Chaminade.
I'll remind everyone that the super chat is available. So if you enjoy what the Wholesome One brings and hear what we deliver on a daily basis here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, you are certainly encouraged to jump on the super chat. And of course, Wholesome One on his YouTube channel, HOLSUM, the number one. We served up this topic a couple weeks ago, didn't have time to get the Wholesome One's take on this one, but recruiting is obviously the lifeblood of every program. It certainly can be a drama, a soap opera, a 2 and 3 year process of tracking these kids and where they're going to go and their preferences and their visits and the building of relationships from coach to player. And it's an interesting process, and it's become more involved and complicated and much more out there in the public, obviously, with the ascent of social media. So here's the one that I presented to Cam Underwood a few weeks ago, and now have a chance to hear from you. Who's the one that got away? Who is the one that and you can certainly expand the list if you want to go past one, but we'll start with number one in regards to, man, I really wanted this kid, knew he was going to be a player for us. We thought we had him. And in the days that led up to National Signing Day, or maybe on that day, he just went on the other side.
Has to be a young man that is living his dream right now. Was a top 10 pick. He's from South Florida, from Miami. Went to Columbus with one of our players who's in the draft also, Trajan Bandy. And I'm talking about CJ Henderson, Chris Henderson, man. He was prototypical size, prototypical speed, as you saw at Florida. Man, I mean, committed to us for well over 2 years. And something happened. I mean, there's different stories that go on. And you kind of got to be careful with that because you don't know what's the truth and what's not. But at the same time, a lot of stories go out about what happened and how we didn't get a chance to keep him on board with us. But he ended up going to the in-state rival Florida Gators and ended up being a 9th overall pick out of Florida. So therefore, you think he would have done either something similar or at least been a first rounder for us here at Miami. I mean, 6'1", legit 6'1" guy, legit sub 4.5, 4.4 speed. I mean, tackling was a little iffy, but coverage, press man skills, CJ Henderson was top notch, man, and it hurt to lose him. We got Trajan Bandy, but he was a hardworking young man, but at the same time, he's 5'8" and whatever, but he gave his heart for Miami. But it would have been nice to have CJ Henderson opposite of him or be able to have Bandy go to the nickel as a result of having CJ on the outside, man. But unfortunately, you look at it, a lot of these things, when it comes to these young men making those type of decisions, we as a program have to create a factory that these young men want to come and be a part of. And it's something that we are working on. It's not there yet. It's not done yet. But it hurts, but you can't really get mad at these recruits who choose some of the other schools because we have not been producing at that position as of late. That's a realistic approach to the situation.
Who else comes to mind in regards to who got away, whether it's was a huge disappointment at the time and maybe they didn't even turn out, but having at least going back to in the moment, you really thought they were going to be a player, or certainly it's going to hurt even more if the guy like a CJ Henderson turns out to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, maybe not even to that degree, but somebody who turned out to be a really good college football player that you thought was going to commit to the Canes and sign.
Got you. I mean, I could even go back to Alex Collins, who went to Arkansas and ended up, tearing it up, which was super weird how that went down. He was one of the first guys with the whole mother situation on ESPN. Like, she snatched his LOI and was like, nah, we're going to Miami. It just took off and, she ran away with it. It was like really weird, but he ended up going to Arkansas. Even at that same position at running back, Dalvin Cook, Miami Central, a guy that coming out of high school, Joe Yerby was ranked higher. Joe Yerby was the guy, but Dalvin had the size, he had the athleticism, he had to be shaped and molded, and then he turned out to be the much better football player. One is still playing football right now, the other one is not. If I'm going back even further, I would have to say Teddy Bridgewater also. What he was in Dade County, as far as what Ja'Cory Harris was just a couple years before that, Teddy Bridgewater was that and even more. And to have Randy Shannon be fired at the time that he was, when those guys were committed to Miami, it had a ripple effect. You had him, you had Eli Rogers, you had Kelvin Benjamin, who wasn't committed, who is the cousin of Travis Benjamin, who went here and played at Miami. He wasn't committed, but had, on all accounts, said I was going to Miami if they had Teddy, but he goes to Louisville. Eli Rogers ends up going to Louisville. Travis Benjamin goes up the road to Tallahassee. So it was a kind of a ripple effect all the way through when it came to that situation. But those are kind of the guys off the top of my head. I could probably go on and on if I really sat and thought about it. But we've won a couple of those recruiting wars, but to me, it was more of when we recruit these guys, a lot of them are coming because they want to come and start right now. We have to build the program to where young men respect it enough that they can come to Miami and take a red shirt. They can come to Miami and be a part of the growth process, not just come there because they know that they're going to get a starting job. And you have to build that. You have to build that respect amongst the recruits as a recruiter. And then once they sign with you as someone like, I'm going to trust this coach. He has the process broken down. He's been here for a while. I've known him for a while. I trust what he's going to put me in and the situation he's going to put me in. And I can foresee myself in that system making the same plays that the guys before me made. You haven't had that at Miami in a while. Hopefully Manny Diaz and his new staff can change that.
Got the wholesome one on the line, talking Miami football here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. what you need to do if you haven't subscribed is please do. The reason you do that is costs nothing, doesn't hurt you, helps the channel. And on top of that, we've got all sorts of schedules flying all over the place between myself and my guests, the wholesome one included. Therefore, we've just got to connect when we can. So if you subscribe, you turn on the bell for the notifications. I get those live streams scheduled as quickly as possible, and you know when we're going live. Otherwise, it's just a hit or miss proposition. So you hit the bell for the notifications, and you know when we're going live here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And, of course, get yourself on over to the Wholesome One, HOLSUM, here on YouTube, and lock in on his content talking Miami football. Wholesome One, here's another one for you.
Sure.
If you could award a ring, a championship ring, national championship ring, to any former Miami player who did not win one, whether this be the person that you think deserves it the most, or I saw this question asked on Twitter, just in general, talking about great all-time athletes and who didn't win a ring, that if you could go back and give them one. And so I'll grind it down to the Miami football
to
scene.
the Miami Hurricanes. Okay, yep. Cool. I'm going to have to be a little bit more modern with my answer. And it's actually one of the last answers on the question that I presented to Cam that we couldn't really answer on live before. And I'm going to say Duke Johnson in 2014. The reason why I say that is because Duke Johnson, what he did stabilizing the program, because we were in sanctions. You know, he was a big-time 4-star, 5-star athlete out of Miami, Norland, which is right next to where we play football, you know, in Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens, but it's actually Norland. And he was so big time. I mean, electric. Trash Pile Stadium legend. And that's the Mecca down in South Florida. It's called Trash Pile Stadium, over a historic head coach from Miami, Trash Pile. And he would just jump off of the screen to people, even from a freshman all the way through. So even when he was a Liberty City Warrior in Optimus ball, and then went to Norland, and then as a freshman was like a wide receiver, kick return, punt return guy, and just jumped off the screen to people. And then they went to state his junior year and lost. And his senior year, he scored all 5 touchdowns in the state championship game. I mean, he had 2 rushing, 1 receiving, 1 punt return, 1 kick return, just took over the game. And every time he scored, threw that U up. Every single time threw that U. And see, it was kind of the hometown hero was coming to Miami, and we couldn't wait. And even from his first game at Boston College all the way to his last game versus South Carolina in the Belk Bowl game, he was a big-time playmaking guy for us. And he was kind of the last hope to where, if you look back on it, if he doesn't come here, then we don't get Tracy Howard. We don't get Eric Flowers. We don't get a lot of the Stacy Coley that came on later on after that. He was that big recruiter off the field, just kind of how people say that DJ Dallas was the ambassador of the class and things of that nature. Duke Johnson did it without having to do all of that talking. You know, he literally told Tracy Howard, you come here, I'll give you 3, I'll take 8. This back before you could have double numbers. So he gave him number 3, which is something he wore since 5-6 years old at Liberty City Park for the Liberty City Warriors. All the way up, he wore number 3. And then he gave it away to Tracy Howard, who wore number 3 at Miramar High School in Broward, and told him, you come here, I'll give you number 3, who was a Florida lock. He had against Tampa Plant in the state championship game. Tracy Howard had the game ceiling, supposed to be interception. He did the Gator chomp. The very next day, Duke is like, no, man, come to Miami. I'll give you number 3. And he ends up picking Miami on the National Signing Day. He gave a lot. And for us, as far like that younger generation, he was like our big-time guy that chose Miami and had somewhat similar of the production he had at Miami Norland as he had at the University of Miami. And so if I could award a ring to any player, I would have to say Randy Duke Johnson. Absolutely.
Mr. Rubicon, he agrees with you. Duke Johnson, period. Yep. Got to vote for Brad Kaya as well in the comments section.
Ooh, yeah. But then you also, if you reward one to Duke in 2014, then you reward one to Brad Kai. That was his freshman year. I mean, not only one player gets the ring, if you give the ring to that player, you pick that specific year, then everyone would get the ring. You get Denzel Perryman gets his ring. Eric Flowers gets his ring. Artie Burns, as a true freshman, gets his ring, So everybody gets a chance to get a ring.
Wholesome One, are you an NFL draft guy?
Big time. Big time. It's a great way to be able to evaluate your players on a national scale. So that's what I like to do, is compare and contrast our players with a lot of the other big time guys. And I get to sit back and kind of take my Miami fandom off and look at them as a prospect. So I love the NFL draft. It's a great thing to watch, man.
Of course, nobody taken off the board last night from Miami in the first round. We talked about that with you and Cam a couple of weeks ago in regards to Miami's, of course, dominance at the NFL draft for years and years and years, and that it's been certainly the program's been represented in the NFL draft heavily, continues to be, but in regards to elite top end first rounders, it's been a bit sparse, more so than it was in years past in the last few years. Do you have any thoughts about who's going to get taken first? We got MD Bowler Kid, whatever that turns out. His handle is asking about the first Kane to go off the board.
Believe it's going to be either one of the two. After, every draft has kind of a life of its own to a certain extent. When you really sit and watch it, you see how there's a run. There's always a run on tackles. There's always a run on QBs. There's always a run on wide receivers. So when you look at a couple of those positions, I think you got to be able, in this pass-happy era of football, you got to be able to get after the QB, people that can help your QB, or get a QB. one of those three things. And at Miami, we don't have a QB going into the draft this year. We have some people that could help the QB as far as your DJ Dallases, your Jeff Thomases, your KJ Osbornes. But I'm going to go with John Garvin because his edge rushing ability has kind of started to really take a nice climb up on NFLdraft.com, NFL Prospects, like all the websites that I use for my draft prospect breakdown series. They're really jumping him up to late fourth, early fifth round defensive end prospect. So I'm going to go with John Garvin. Originally, I always thought it was going to be DJ Dallas because of his intangibles. Off the field, he's so focused. He's a good program guy. He's a good organization guy. And NFL teams love that. If they're going to spend a late round draft pick on you, they don't want you to be a headache problem off the football field. DJ Dallas won't be that guy. But you talk about being able to get after the QB, John Garvin. So I'm going with John Garvin. I'm going to say late fourth, early fifth. And I'm going to say he's either going to the Eagles. They need help at defensive end. I could see him being a Kansas City Chief as a strong side 3-4 linebacker for them, being able to rush against right tackles. If I were to give a third team, maybe the Buccaneers. I'd say the Buccaneers. They need a little bit of help in the depth of edge rush. Because you got to think, when it comes to the NFL draft, you have people who are on contracts coming up. Who can I get as a cheaper, similar type player? The NFL draft is like recruiting, but it's not because there's actual money involved with what they do. So the picks aren't always just the best player. The pick isn't always what we need. It's kind of like who can fit what we need now and later financially, especially in those late rounds.
Good stuff from the Wholesome One. Join them on YouTube right here. HOLSUM and the number 1. Was there anything that happened there in the first round that caught your eye or moved you in any which way or surprised you?
Oh, well, besides CJ going 9th overall and knowing he used to wear the U, oh, man. I was super happy to see Tua go to the Dolphins. I'm not a Dolphin fan. I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan. Because of Ray Lewis, yes, because of Ray Lewis. Yes, that's why. Tua Tagovailoa. I tweeted it out before. I don't know if you saw it or not, but I was like, man, I really hope that they get the right guy. And Tua Tagovailoa is the right guy. Of course you have, but that situation works out perfectly. You have Fitzmagic, the guy that everyone loves in Miami to a certain extent. He can either give you the first half of the season or he can give you the whole season and let Tua sit and get healthy while learning the game. at the NFL level, but he's the best QB. You know, people say Joe Burrow. I'm not the biggest Joe Burrow guy in the National Football League, unless his passing coordinator was going to come with him from LSU to wherever he was. Now, if the Panthers were to have drafted Joe Burrow, I would say yes, it might get nasty. it might get pretty scary, but that's not what happened. I think Joe Burrow will go on and have a successful NFL career, but as far as torching everybody all up and down the field like he was at LSU, I don't think that that's going to happen with the Bengals. I think Tua Tagovailoa is going to do very, very well if the Miami Dolphins can treat him with the proper, I don't want to say respect, but you have to respect the fact that a hip injury can be so sensitive. It's kind of serious at the same time, so you got to be very careful with hip injuries because they can be career ending. Look at Bo Jackson. You got to be careful with that, and you have a QB there who has experience who can kind of coach him up. And if he out there stinking it up, then you could put Tua in week 8, week 9, or you kind of let him say, hey, this is your red shirt year. We're going to sacrifice this year as far as the digits goes, win-loss record for the betterment of your career moving forward.
Yeah, when it comes to Joe Burrow, obviously his receivers were so elite compared to their competition. The passing game coordinator, Joe Brady, as you mentioned, going to the Panthers and what he was able to do with that offense. And to Burrow's defense, the first year at LSU in 2018, he just stepped on campus in the summer, so he had to learn terminology, approach, playbook, get acclimated to campus, the locker room, the teammates, everything right out of the gate, and faced Miami, a good defense, and an SEC schedule hit him in the mouth pretty quickly. And he had a decent season, but it wasn't anything close to just exploding the next season. So minus not the receivers, he'll have NFL caliber receivers, maybe not this first edition in Cincinnati, they'll have to build around him, but he's going to have that, but not the LSU level receivers versus their competition. And then again, the passing game coordination of Joe Brady and the advantage that he had. So we haven't seen Joe Burrow without that
Correct.
win the job at Ohio State. So that will be fascinating. I think when it comes to Tua, it was just the risk reward versus the injuries that he's had to endure, and whether, you know, I made this comment. We did a draft show this morning that to compare the grind that Tua had to go through in the SEC with Alabama to what he's going to face in the NFL, basically he would see 4 or 5 games like, and I don't even want to compare it across the board. It's not a direct comparison, but something similar to where almost the entire defense that he's going to face at LSU or Auburn, where 7, 8, 9 of those guys are going to be playing in the NFL. He's facing that type of talent, but he only does that maybe about 4 to 5 times a year versus it's going to be a 17-game schedule. And the guy also was able to come off the field in the third quarter probably 75% of the time, as opposed to he's going to be in there needing to play 3.5 hours on Sunday.
Yeah.
You know, those games are close.
And then you have the best of the best players. You got the best of the best coaches. I mean, I don't even know if there's like I know there has to be a limit, but it has to, I guess, be within the pay. But, you know, in the college level, you only have a certain amount of real coaches. You got a whole bunch of GAs and QCs and stuff like that. The NFL level, man, you got a guy that's designated for, you know, when he lifts his foot at this time, this play is what happens this percentage of time. I mean, you got everything is super detailed to the highest nth degree, you know, and he had a taste of that with both QBs we're discussing, with Tua and Joe Burrow, playing in the SEC and playing against each other, you know, so for 2 years, one outshined the other each year. But I mean, if you look at, well, except for this year, Tua didn't play in Alabama in the LSU game this year. He was hurt. It was against Mac Jones.
I believe I'll triple check this, but I believe he played that game. I'm
Really?
almost positive Tua played that game. He put up a big game. I'm guessing
Auburn,
like 420,
you're
4 touchdowns.
You're right. It was Auburn that Tua
LSU
played it, that Tua did not play in, and then Mac threw like 2 crazy interceptions. I was rewatching a couple of games, and that's where I was like, what is this? That can't be Tua. I mean, he threw like a couple of dumb interceptions, and they missed a field goal, yada, yada, yada. But you're right. It was a guns a blazing type shootout.
Yeah.
And isn't that crazy?
41.
If you were to go back 10 years from now, and let's say I did a show with you, and because that's when you kind of started it, right? Around 2010, 2011,
Yeah.
YouTube. And
Absolutely.
we're on, and I'm going to say, you know what? 10 years from now, the SEC is going to look just like the Big 12 and the Pac 12, but even better, souped up. And you would look at me like, no way, especially because you looked at the coaches who were in the conference at that time. Looked at the players. I mean, you had 330-pound Terrence Cody. You had 310-pound Marcel Darius going up against 330-pound offensive guards from LSU. Now everybody's like, the heaviest person on most rosters is probably like 315. But his body fat percentage is down. He's lean. He probably runs a 5 flat in some way, shape, or form or fashion. It's great to see how modern, everyone has gotten. And we're late to the party at Miami, but we're finally starting to get to that point too, man. So, yeah. Any surprises for you that you saw or that you weren't expecting from the draft?
I wasn't real enamored with the Jordan Love pick to the Packers, and it has nothing to do with him as a player, because the evaluations are that his ceiling is through the roof. It had more to do with the Packers situation. I find it curious that a team that went to the NFC Championship game but got blown out in the NFC Championship game and in the better of the two conferences, the NFC, which is just stacked when you think Cowboys, Packers, Niners, Saints, on down the line, Rams,
Vikings. You got to add the Bucks to that too. It's
my goodness, man. Yeah. The conference is just layered with good teams. That if you went to an NFC Championship game and you've got a 36-year-old all-time great quarterback, don't you think like you might want to take advantage of this window of opportunity? And the stat that I heard last night that I just couldn't believe, but thinking back, I couldn't come up with anything to dispute it, is that Aaron Rodgers has not had a skill position player drafted in the first round since he's been there. In 15 years, 2005, they haven't drafted a skill position player for him.
Nope, not in the first round. They spent a lot on either offensive line, defensive players. I mean, the Packers pick is always one I look forward to just to see if they would ever do anything for Aaron. And I'm not an Aaron Rodgers fan. I'm a Tom Brady guy. But at the same time, it's like, how do you keep wasting this guy? And I'm starting to think that they're just kind of done with him. They're ready to move on.
It seems like it doesn't.
The way that they just like, no, we don't care. All right, whatever, step off if you want to, stay if you can, That's how I look at it. Another thing I thought about, and I was discussing this with a good friend of mine who's in the chat, Mr. Rubicon, and I was saying, isn't it crazy to watch guys, and there's no disrespect to these schools, Texas Christian, Texas Tech, a horrific USC program, still producing first rounders? We got to pull it together at Miami. We have to, because that doesn't make any sense. I mean, the TCU wide receiver that was drafted, his measurables are almost identical to Jeff Thomas. Speedster slot guy that cuts up in and out of routes, and he's a punt return, kick return guy, but it was used properly, and you see him go in the first round. Those are the type of things that should be happening. When these guys put pen to paper as 4-star, 5-star guys, you're like, oh yeah, he's a top 2 round guy. At worst, 3rd round. Hasn't been like that.
And to make matters worse, TCU had 2 players selected in the first round. A corner and a wide receiver.
Huh?
A corner and a wide receiver.
So what I'm saying, that, and it hurts because if you ever go back and do the star system, our players, Miami should be filtering the National Football League with it. And I hate being that guy. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, we did this and that guy. But when we come on and we discuss it, yeah, we have had problems in the past, but I truly believe that Coach Manny Diaz is making the hires. I'm not saying he's recruiting on the level of the greats or whatever, but he's making the hires to where the little details will finally be focused up. That's my thing. We finally made the scheme switches on both sides. Officially a 4-2-5. Officially a spread multiple. Those are things that like I'm finally happy to see happen. Now we have to make it a reality. It's something that we, when we write it down or when we implement it into a video game or we put it on pen and paper, it looks great. We have to finally start to see it on the field this upcoming fall, which I'm hoping we have a season.
Bergie is commenting on Shaq, Pinckney, and Bandy not going drafted. Says it hurts, but that he's predicting that trio will go undrafted. And I want to ask you specifically about Shaq Quarterman and just his style of play. Is he a rough transition to the NFL in regards to being just a run stuffer and an inside guy and having difficulty maybe keeping up downfield and then also not being much of a pass rusher?
Unfortunately, yes. It would be tough for him. I mean, a lot of the evals that I have read on him is that he's a shallow guy, meaning he has to be in coverage wise. He has to be shallow or middle of the field at best. Can't be on the field on third downs unless you're sitting him after the QB. I mean, 46 and a half TFLs in a career, that's a lot of TFLs. 12 sacks, that's a lot of sacks. I mean, a lot of the evals that I was reading saying that his best play was him either downhill dive or him rushing the passer or blitzing, and then he happens to run into a running back, or blitzing and he hits the quarterback. And it's going to be kind of tough for him to get acclimated to the pass-happy NFL. I believe he still will be drafted. I believe he will be another 5th, 6th round guy where a team is going to take a chance on him. I think maybe like the Vikings or the Packers, kind of like in that conference where they're still a little bit, they're pass-happy to a certain extent, but the Vikings still run the ball big time. The Packers still run the ball big time. Bears still run the ball, and the Lions? Well, Lions are a little bit more of the pass happy out of the 4, but I think he would fit well in the NFC North where they still kind of run the ball. I think he could also go to the AFC North to a certain extent. Would I want to see my Ravens draft him? Sure, I wouldn't mind a Hurricane on the team. I could see him going to be a Steeler, maybe. Something like that, to where it's still a black and blue division, to where we're still hitting and smacking and running. What's up, Hot Boy Jay? How you doing, family? Stuff like that. If he goes to a pass-happy division, it could get pretty bad. It could get pretty bad for him. Of course, wish the absolute best, but if I'm answering an honest question, I think it'll be tough for him in a pass-happy division to hang around. But Trajan Bandy, I can see him going undrafted. I can see Mike Pinckney going undrafted because of his injury history. I mean, how do you go all year having a broken fibula and we tell him that it's a hip injury? He goes to the NFL draft where the NFL draft evaluators evaluate his injury and find out it's a fibula. That's not cool. It's not whatever was going on there. We got to fix that big time. But out of those 3, I can see Michael Pinckney and Bandy going undrafted, but I see Shaq Quarterman being drafted and someone taking a chance on him because he has big special teams acumen also. I mean, he was a gunner for us for a while. I mean, I think he played special teams all 4 years. Yeah, he played specials all 4 years at Miami. And that's a nice place for your late round draft pick guys too.
Got our guy BGPO Football Funk, a.k.a. DeAndre. DeAndre always contributes here. Always appreciate him. Always calls into the call-in shows, which I'll remind everyone. Our next one is slated for Sunday night. Sunday night, call in to talk college football at 10 p.m. Eastern time with me. And thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution, BGPO Football Funk. Again, DeAndre's pointing out here, he says Alabama, period. Then it says state. That's not Alabama State, is it?
Yeah, I think he's talking about Alabama State.
Alabama State has more first-round picks than Miami, Florida State, Texas, and A&M last 2 years combined.
Thanks. I mean, okay. Thanks for the donation, man.
Yeah, we appreciate it, DeAndre. Thank you so much. and just pointing that out as well. I can't verify that off the top of my head. I'm wondering that
I don't know. I don't know.
Texas
Alabama
A&M,
State. I don't know. Unless
it must be 1-0. I don't know.
Yeah, you may be right. No, you had Burns, the DN from Tallahassee.
He's
Burns
saying
went
the last
last
2
year.
years. So he's saying 19 and 20.
Oh, was Burns 18?
Eh,
I thought it was last year's first round draft pick.
I thought he was too.
Yeah. Texas hasn't. Texas has been kind of. I would say Miami, Texas, and USC. We've all been kind of on the same issue here, getting it rolling a little bit. Texas, I would say, out of the three, is the one that's trying their absolute hardest. I mean, they're funneling money into the program and making changes year round. But SC and Miami, we are struggling. If I told you, I say if I came to you 15 years ago and said Texas, Miami, and SC would be, I don't want to say bottom feeders. That's just
no
above 500 teams. You wouldn't believe me. No way.
Yeah,
Maybe Miami.
if you told me one of them was, I would say, okay, yeah, everybody has a down cycle. But if you said, yeah, Florida State, Miami, Texas, USC are all winning 6 games a year, 7 in that range. So for USC, basically, it's been 2 bad years. 2016, 2017, they won the Pac-12 championship, went to the Rose Bowl, went to the Cotton Bowl. So it's been, but I know it's been more extended than that. But they did have 2 good years under Clay Helton, right when he took over. Before that, they were down. So really, the USC down cycle has been since like 2009. So they're running on 10 plus years of down teams since Pete Carroll left. Aside from those 2 years, Miami's running on 15 or 16 down years. Florida State's running on.
Well, give us 17, Mark. Give us 17.
I'll give you 17. Jumping back up close to the top 10.
Right.
I think you finished 13th that year at 10-3.
Right.
For Florida State, it's been 3 consecutive down years at 7-6, 5-7, 6-7. So that's under 500 for 3 consecutive years for Florida State. For Texas, basically, they've been down since Mac Brown left. They went to the national championship game in 2009. They were decent a couple of years after that. And Charlie Strong and Tom Herman, they haven't been good. They turned in a decent season 2 years ago, finished right on the edge of the top 10 and won the Sugar Bowl, but I'm not going to
push
anybody for being back for 1 year. So basically, they've been down for the length of time that USC's been down since about 2009, 2010. It's been 10 years. The Texas has been winning, a lot of 7-5 kind of seasons. And their recruiting classes have been exceptional. They've out-recruited in terms of the rankings. Oklahoma.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing that when I talk about young men having to trust their future to a staff, trust their future to a coach, how can you get upset? I mean, he even went and clarified at Alabama State. Okay.
Yeah, and threw in
who was that first rounder then?
We appreciate that. It was Alabama State. I checked it out as well.
Who was their first rounder?
It was a 23rd pick. And I'm going to have to go back now because I was trying to verify those other schools. Texas A&M really flooded the 2nd and 3rd rounds the last couple of years, but they did not have a first-round pick. So the Alabama State selection was... Oh, shoot. Give me a second here.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you this much. David Njoku, our last first-rounder, is doing pretty well in the National Football League for the Browns. So I'm happy about that.
Absolutely.
Artie Burns, on the other hand, he's had a little shakiness, but that's the tough part of having a number 1 corner in the National Football League. You're going to have some flashes, you're going to have some downfall, but hopefully he can get his feet back under him in the NFC North with the Bears as a number 2, because I think they still have Prince Amukamara, correct? I think they still have Prince there. So I think he can go there and
Believe
be a
so.
number 2, number 3 there, and probably be able to redo his career. Just like before them, I was, taking credit for stuff is not something I always like to do, but I do say this a lot. Eric Flowers, out of Miami Nolan, originally from Dr. Michael Crop in Miami. I said this guy is a dog run blocker. Move him inside to guard, and he will be able to change his whole career. I said this back in like 2016 about him when he was a Giant. I was like, if you move him to the inside to guard, he will be able to flourish because he loves to run block. He's a quick setter. So that means he can't jump as far as long setting 3 to 4 steps. He likes, as soon as the ball snaps, take 2 steps, punch you right in your chest. That's guard play. He goes to the Washington Redskins. They move him into guard. This guy gets Pro Bowl votes. Ends up getting a big-time 3-year, $30 million to come home in Miami and play for the Dolphins.
Alabama State's Titus Howard. So thanks to Bergie and thanks to BGBPO Football Funk. Don't know still, DeAndre, what that stands for. But anyway, DeAndre, hit me up on Twitter. DM me there. I know that you had contacted me about something. Certainly just go ahead and do that. So anyway, Titus Howard, tackle, Houston Texans, 23rd pick overall, first round 2019.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Just trying to make a point that Florida State, Texas, Miami are down, and Texas A&M. Texas A&M is not down. They just haven't had a first-round pick.
I mean, you also think Texas A&M's schedule is out of this world. I mean, last year it was, oh my goodness. I think they played 5 out of 6. The 5 of their 6 losses were to top 6 teams at the end of the. It was wild.
They lost 5 games. They went 8-5.
Right.
They went 7-5. They won their bowl game, and they lost to Bama, Clemson, Auburn, Georgia, LSU. Yeah, everybody that they played and lost to, Auburn slipped out of the top 10 after they lost the bowl game, but basically everybody they lost to was in the top 10 in the country. Somebody called me the other night and they asked me about Texas A&M slipping from 9-4 to 8-5, and I said, well, this is basically what happened. Jimbo Fisher took over. They played a pretty strong 9-4 season. They played an NC State team with that was pretty decent and beat them by 40 points in a bowl game. So actually, once they got out of the SEC West, they've been showing us something anyway. That was in 2018. In 2019, basically, the reason they went from 9-4 to 8-5 is that Vanderbilt got replaced with Georgia on their schedule. So basically, they played the same schedule and lost to the same teams, LSU, Auburn, Alabama, Clemson. But then they had to go to Georgia, too. They had to go on the road to Georgia on top of that. They had a stretch run in November where they went like LSU, Georgia, Alabama. I think it was I got the
because I know Clemson was early on in the season.
Yeah, Clemson was early.
It was like a whole month where I think they went 0-4. Like they played a gauntlet, man.
And certainly that's no defense long term. Give Jimbo Fisher some time, but long term, he's paid to win championships. It's almost like Jim Harbaugh's situation at Michigan. Those guys are being paid at the very top of college football to win championships. So he's going to have to figure that out.
Absolutely.
But right now, let's give him a year or two.
Absolutely. And then at the same time, they had some really nice recruiting this year. Hey, let's see what they do. One of the things I look at when it comes to, I wanted to ask you this a long time ago. Do you think when you look at what we've done, when you look at who we've brought in, do you see Miami taking steps to change our mindset as a program to become serious about football? From a non-Miami Hurricanes perspective, just either this offseason, because I would say this offseason, because Enos was not a big-time hire. But Red Lashley, I would say, is probably a top 20 offensive coordinator. Rob Likens, you look at Arizona State, he was their wide receiver coach for a while, and look at him producing first-round draft picks back-to-back with N'Keal Harry, and he was the lead recruiter for N'Keal Harry and the young man that was drafted last night at Arizona State. Would you say that Miami is making hires to become serious at football?
So I'll start with what I can't speak to, and that's the administration. I don't know what the
Well, none
commitment
of us
is
can.
there.
Yeah,
I don't dig into that. I don't know. I don't read about it. I just don't have the time or interest. I just deal strictly with what I see on the field and the player development, the recruiting, the coaches, and so forth.
Mhm.
So there was a two-part issue with Mark Richt, I think. I still believe that that was a good hire, and I would make the same evaluation because he obviously showed at Georgia he could win. And then he's coming home to Miami, and I thought, okay, this is a great fit. This is a credible coach that is going to get them back to a certain place. He may not win it all, but they'll be in great shape to win 10 plus games most seasons with him. But I think he lost that spark. He lost that drive. And you've got to be a grinder, man. You've got to be committed to working 15, 18 hours every day, year round, every day to building a football program and maintaining it at that level. And I just don't think he was committed to that. I think the idea of coaching at his alma mater as a last stop, go out with a blaze of glory, put in 5 good years, hopefully do something special, sounded good to him. But once he got in there, I just don't think the spark was there. And then on top of that, he made the decision with his son. That was just beyond for a guy that should be smarter than that. You can raise your son, you can put him in a good place. You've got every connection in the world. Go send him off to some FCF school to earn
To
his
grow,
rep
build,
and
yeah.
cut his chops. Great. You can make that contact and let him grind for 5 to 8 years somewhere else, or even 2 or 3 if he's really that good. But man, to put your reputation and your job on the line for your son, anyway, that's in the past. So the reason I brought that up was to compare what I see from Mark Richt, at least on the surface, to Manny Diaz, which I see a lot more hunger and fight out of him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's committed, and I think he certainly loves the area. He's entrenched there. He has equity built up there in the program, in the locker room. So I think that, and certainly the recruiting footprint is right there. The recruiting needs to get better, but it's not been
Bad, yeah.
by any stretch.
I
They
mean, like
should
you
be
always
winning 8
say,
or 9 games a
the
year.
stat that you don't want, we got, 6 and 7, but you got 13th ranked recruiting class. Worst record, the highest recruiting, ranking, but go ahead.
When you're recruiting in the top 15 in the nation, and especially you're in that division, then it's just not matching up. It just doesn't match up. The player development isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
This season, when you look at the schedule, if things can be somewhat normal with what's going on in the world, if they can have a legitimate football season, it's going to tell me a lot about what Manny Diaz is capable of doing.
Absolutely. One thing for me, when I look at it, I'm saying, are we becoming serious about football? So there's a growth process. Okay, us as Miami Hurricanes fans, we can't help it. We always think we're up here. It's always, we're going to national championship. We're going to the playoffs. And the Coastal, we're gonna beat the Coastal. We haven't proven that anymore. So at this point, there needs to be a step that we have to take. And for right now, it has to be winning the Coastal games. Take those games just as serious as you do when Tallahassee comes up, just as serious as you do when Louisville came through. The heartbreaking part about it all was that you look at 2019 and you see that when we played the better teams, we showed up. We played Florida, we fought in that game. Probably should have won, didn't win. Okay. We played Louisville, a very talented team with a lot of South Florida recruits on it. They may not have had the high record at the end of the year, but they were a very talented team that came on late, fighting hard. blew them out the water. You know, you play Tallahassee, a rivalry game. You're going to get up and we're going to fight. And we're going to kick them in the face. Won the game sufficely. Dominant performance by the defensive front, which resulted in us getting a whole bunch of big plays. You know, shout out to D. Wiggins and guys like that, making big. Jeff Thomas on a bomb. Guys like that showed up in that game, right? But then you show up at home to Georgia Tech, and it's not the same focus. You go to Duke, it's not the same focus. We're not even going to talk about FIU. That's a whole separate issue. But you have to be able to get the message across to the young men. We got to take every game just as serious as the last one. Every single game has to be Rose Bowl, national championship game. It's in it because we're in it. We're going to focus and create that as a foundation. That's what you have to preach, and that's what you have to be as a program. Not just get up when the best teams come through, or not get up because it's a nighttime home game versus UVA and we got brand new uniforms and we're on national TV and you got to show up because your girlfriend wants to see you make a play. No, make the play because that's what we're giving you $50,000 a semester to come to the University of Miami to do. Make football plays. Simple thing like catching the football. We had 40 drop passes 2 years ago, Mark. You ever heard of that at a D1 school? Everyone drops passes, but 40? No way. Because we weren't paying attention to the details of things. This is where I need to throw the ball. This is how I need to catch the ball because this is the route that I'm running, and this is the way that my QB is throwing the ball. So therefore, I need to catch the ball like this in order to make a play. It's steps, not just jump to, we got to score a whole bunch of touchdowns. We just got to win the game. No, it's not about that. And I see with the hires that Coach Manny Diaz has brought in, we're going to be a very detailed-oriented team. And I'm pretty excited about looking forward to that.
For everybody who's on the line that joined us late, I know Dante Colon commented that in the live chat. He's late to the party. So what you need to do is just let the video post. You go back, you watch the entire thing start to finish. Great insight, as always, from the Wholesome One. Speaking of the NFL draft, that's what I am called to work on tonight and tomorrow night. So I have got to run. Wholesome One, we appreciate you stopping by. And again, everybody out there, subscribe. HOLSUM, the number one. Costs nothing. It's a couple clicks of the mouse, and you get locked into first-rate Miami Hurricanes analysis. And then you do the same thing here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. You turn on the bell for the notifications, and you know when we're coming live each and every time.
Big facts. Right. Thank you so much, Mark. I truly appreciate it. Shout out to everybody that was here. Thank you all so much for coming in. To the lovers of the Miami Hurricanes and the haters. I see some Gator fans in there, man. Hey, enjoy it while you guys are doing well. It's all right. It won't last long. Thank you very much. Have a good one. God bless.
See everybody Sunday night at 10 o'clock Eastern time. 10 o'clock Eastern time for our call-in show. Let me throw the banner up here. We want to blow this up big, folks. Sunday nights, call me up. Talk college football directly on the phone lines. Sunday nights at 10 o'clock Eastern time. We'll see you right back here. Hopefully that clock will stay true. Stay safe, stay wise, stay healthy as well. And again, hopefully 126 days to the game we love. See you guys soon.